Today on The Real Story, the impeachment inquiry and the arrest of two associates of President Trump's lawyer, Rudy Giuliani. Plus, the U.S. troop pullout from northern Syria prompts Turkey to launch attacks against Kurdish forces there, forces that had helped defeat ISIS in Syria. Reaction from Connecticut Senator Chris Murphy.
And free college tuition. It could be a reality at UConn for in-state students who qualify. It's among the top priorities for the university's new president, Tom Katsouleas. How much will that cost and how will it be paid for? And what other plans does he have? President Katsouleas joins us this morning.
Should college athletes be paid? Should they be able to profit from endorsements? It's against NCAA rules, but the state of California has gone ahead and passed a law that would allow it. And now, one Connecticut lawmaker wants it to be legal here as well. It's all today on The Real Story. Hi there and good morning. You're watching The Real Story. I'm Al Terzi alongside Jenn Bernstein.
Thank you, Al, and good morning to everyone at home. Well, news cycles continue to be dominated by the impeachment inquiry. Toward the end of the week, we learned that subpoenas have been issued against two associates of President Trump's lawyer, Rudy Giuliani, for campaign finance violations, allegedly trying to funnel foreign money into U.S. elections.
Another big story, the attacks launched by Turkey against Kurds in northeastern Syria, the very same Kurds who had helped U.S. troops defeat ISIS in Syria. Turkish forces acted after U.S. troops had been withdrawn from that area under presidential order. Joining us now to discuss these matters and more, Connecticut Senator Chris Murphy.
Good to be with you guys.
Good morning.
Good to be with you. All right, so let's talk first about this situation with Turkey attacking Kurds. I mean, the Kurds help us defeat ISIS there, and this is the reward?
It's horrifying, it's immoral, and it's really hurting our security interests. We asked the Kurds to defeat ISIS for us because we weren't willing, nor should we have been willing, to put hundreds of thousands of U.S. troops into Syria. Then we convinced the Kurds to dismantle their defenses. We told them that we would protect them. President Trump announced on Sunday night that he is double-crossing the Kurds, that he is pulling our support, pulling our troops, pulling our protection, and he has effectively invited the Turks to come in and take over that portion of Syria. There's been a long-standing campaign by the Turkish government to try to diminish the political power of the Kurdish minority inside Turkey, and so the Turks don't want them to be their own mini-state inside Syria. This will likely result in thousands of deaths of Kurdish soldiers who fought with us against ISIS. And the result will be that nobody else is going to ever want to partner with the United States because we have now gone back on our word.
Now, the president has said that he believes there could be some kind of sanctions for Turkey, or that it could be mediated with Syria. What are your thoughts on that?
That was the president's job, to try to mediate a solution, to try to convince the Turks to not slaughter the Kurds after we left. He was unable to get that deal done, and so he announced that he is pulling the United States out from our position of protection, and he is going to allow the slaughter to happen. There's no sanctions that can solve the horror that is happening as we speak. Right now, the Turks are murdering Kurds, and the president could have stopped it by refusing to withdraw those troops. I mean, there's not a single member of Congress that supports this. There's no one in the national security system that has recommended this. This is Trump's own decision. We don't know why he made it. We're all very concerned about the president's business interests, the Trump hotel that's in Turkey. We got to get some answers as to why he did this.
Now, do you expect the Russians will beef up their forces in Syria, or how will that go?
Well, all reports suggest that the Russians are acting in coordination with the Turks. And so there is coordination happening here, and the Russians will ultimately benefit. Bashar al-Assad, the murderous dictator of Syria, will benefit because the Kurds are going to have to go to somebody else for protection now that they can't rely on us. It may be that they are going to go to Assad. And the result of all of this is going to be that Assad gets stronger, Turkey murders thousands of Kurds, and ISIS gets stronger because ISIS is who we were fighting with the Kurds. Now the Kurds have to fight Turkey. ISIS is going to be able to grow.
How present is ISIS right now in that region?
Well, the Kurds had effectively destroyed the territory that ISIS controlled, but they didn't destroy all of ISIS's fighters. There's probably several thousand ISIS fighters that still exist in small cells. There are about 10,000 of them that are in prisons inside Kurdish-controlled territory. And one of the real possibilities is that in the midst of all this fighting, these prisoners will be released or will escape and be able to rejoin the thousands that are still there. This could be the rebirth of ISIS.
Okay, let's talk about the impeachment crisis that we have in America. We've seen the polls inching upward in terms of support for the impeachment process, maybe not necessarily removing the president from office, but at least going through the process. But you have the Republicans who are saying, you didn't take a vote to authorize this inquiry. You got to stop it now. It's not legal. It's not legitimate. What do you say?
Well, you have seen this, 20 to 30 point increase in the polls, people who support either impeaching the president or moving forward with an impeachment inquiry. And that's for a simple reason. They read the transcript. In this transcript, the president of the United States tries to convince a foreign government to help him destroy his political opponents, Hillary Clinton and Joe Biden. And then Rudy Giuliani has worked with the State Department to do the same thing. Americans aren't politicians. They don't feel a need to protect the president at all costs. They read what he said and knew that that was a corrupt act, which is why the American public supports moving forward with this impeachment inquiry. Now, the House is conducting it, not the Senate. We would ultimately be the jury in this case, but I absolutely support this impeachment inquiry going forward.
Now, the president called you out. I mean, we were taking this live, his press conference, and he called you out immediately. And he said that you threatened the president of Ukraine when you were there recently. What did you say to the president of Ukraine?
Yeah, and Rudy Giuliani also called for my impeachment. So, I am now squarely in the sights of the president and his friends for a simple reason. I went to Ukraine because I knew this corruption was happening. And I told the president of Ukraine, do not get involved in an American election. Do not do the bidding of Trump's.
Well, what's he going to do? He's looking for the benefits of our support for what they're doing, military and other support, and he doesn't want to lose that.
Well, but he has not obeyed Trump's demands. I mean, he has not opened these investigations because he knows that's immoral, and he knows that it would hurt Ukraine's reputation if they were to be involved in the president's reelection campaign. And that may be why the aid was pulled, because they didn't do what Trump was asking. But Trump is upset that people like me and others in the administration are trying to stop his corruption. That's why he's angry at us.
Is there concern that pushing the impeachment inquiry only drums up support for him for the next election? From a Democratic point of view, people would look at that and say, why don't the Democrats just let it go and focus on the election moving forward?
I just think we have an obligation to the rule of law and the Constitution. I just don't think that political considerations with this level of corruption admitted to by the president really matters here. So I don't really game out whether this helps the president or hurts him. I think when you have seen this kind of attempt by the president to manipulate the 2020 election, remember what we're talking about is protecting the 2020 election. It's not going to be a free and fair election if the president continues to get away with this. If those are the stakes, then you can't let politics get in the way. Is
soliciting support from another country for your election, getting dirt on an opponent, is it written somewhere that that's a high crime?
Well, it's absolutely illegal, but the question of what a high crime or misdemeanor is, which is the standard for impeachment, is not a legal standard. That's a political standard. And, I just think he's clearly crossed it if he has indeed, as it appears he has, tried to recruit another country to interfere in an American election. You just can't allow a president of the United States to corrupt the Oval Office for those purposes.
It seems that that standard is generally set by whoever's in power in the House, how they interpret those. You've been trying to work with the president on gun legislation, passing background checks, and he seemed open to that. Does this kill any chances of you working together on that?
It's really up to President Trump. I mean, I am still willing to enter into a compromise on background checks legislation. I want universal background checks. I want every gun sale to be subject to a background check. But I'm willing to settle for something less than that in order to get Republican and Democrat support for it. It's interesting, the day that I called for the impeachment inquiry to begin, I got a call from one of Trump's lieutenants at the White House saying, hey, we need to keep talking about background checks. And so there's certainly an element inside the White House, maybe not Trump himself, that thinks that we can still do this, and I'm willing to negotiate.
But he's feeling the pinch on this impeachment crisis, and do you think that's going to make him likely to want to negotiate anything on guns?
He's still the president of the United States. I mean, Bill Clinton didn't stop being president during his impeachment inquiry. Richard Nixon didn't stop being president. So I don't understand why the president of the United States can't both move forward with the impeachment inquiry and do legislation that will save lives. I mean, tell that to all the people who are being killed on the streets of Hartford and New Haven, the kids who fear going to school in the morning, that the president is not going to save their lives because he's mad at Democrats. That just doesn't wash.
Well, I appreciate your time here today. It's always good to catch up with you.
A lot going on these days.
You got this recess underway, but you're as busy as if there were work in Washington.
And I'm glad you're focusing on this issue of getting student athletes paid for their...
Yeah, you've commented on this before.
Yeah,
March,
I'm a big believer that this is a civil rights issue. I think that we need to start finding a way to compensate these student athletes. This industry, college sports, is worth billions, and the only people not making money off it are the stars that actually have their names and likenesses on TV screens.
But do you think that if you give athletes the right to earn money off endorsements and that sort of thing, all of that kind of stardom that goes on top of the athletic stardom, is that going to be a distraction to the education process and for them to be in shape for what they do and that kind of thing?
It's already a distraction from the education process. Anybody that thinks that a big-time college basketball player or big-time college football player is getting the same education that I got when I went to college has not been around one of these programs.
Any thoughts on a federal law copying California's law? Are there talks about that?
I'm working on a bill right now with a Republican senator. We're hopeful to have a bipartisan bill to repeat what California has done and what Connecticut may do very soon.
Can you say what Republican senator?
Not yet, so
Okay.
maybe on the next time I appear on the show.
Perfect.
Okay.
We will ask.
Soon.
Senator Chris Murphy,
Thanks.
we appreciate it. Keep us updated. All right, we have more to come today on The Real Story. More on the debate over allowing college athletes to make money through product endorsements and whether Connecticut should follow California's lead in saying yes to that. West Hartford Senator Derek Slapp is definitely on board with the idea, as you'll see in a Fox 61 News report a little later.
But next, right after a quick break, UConn has a new and fearless leader, President Thomas Katsoulias. He's already made a big proposal. How about this? Free college tuition for students who financially qualify. How will UConn do that? We'll find out.